In the name of God, Your Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, actually I propose to speak in French, but apparently as there is not interpretation from French, I will be speaking in Turkish. I will propose to speak in Turkish, and I'll try to speak as quickly as possible. First of all, I want to say that some of what we have heard is of great importance. First of all, with regard to freedom. Freedom, of course, freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is based on two foundations. One of them is truth, and the other is love. Indeed, it is true, as was said, both of these elements are things which come from God. Their source is God. This is what Jesus, the Lord, has stated himself. I am the light, and I am love. And, of course, one could draw similar such comparisons or similar such phrases from the Holy Quran as well, but I will not make those particular references at this point of time.
Daha doğrusu Yohannes'in mektuplarının birinci.
So, when we take into consideration these particular elements,
ayetlerde şöyle buyurulur.
So,
Allah sevgidir.
God is love, and love is from God.
Allah sevgidir buyurulur.
This is the message that we draw, and this is the message that we receive. In other words, this is the source of love. God is the source of love. So these two elements have their source in God and in no other element whatsoever. And there is one singular absolute source which is eternal, which is universal, which is the Alpha and the Omega, and that is God. So when we take into consideration these particular aspects, when we take this into consideration, we realize that the name of God, be that in the Holy Quran or the Bible, is the same, that this message is the same. In other words, that these are the source of unending love. So, the freedom of religion, the freedom of faith, is something that has to be seen in this particular light. However, in Turkey, unfortunately, because of a different interpretation, this element has been to a certain extent distorted by this particular view on secularism, by secularism as instituted by the Turkish state. And here we see, for example, that the Turkish Republic, the dignity of human beings, and the definition of the state have not brought in any sort of religious point of view whatsoever, have left no space for religion. This has been something completely excluded from the concept of a democratic state as defined by secularism in Turkey. This has led to numerous different false or incorrect or fallacious, to a certain extent, interpretations as to what religion, what the freedom rather of religion is, and what those basic liberties entail. Rather than establish equality and an equal playing field, quite the opposite. Serious inequalities have developed. So, once again, the source of love is God, and this is something which we must not forget. Justitia commutativa, in other words, the equality of law and equality as a principle, and just justitia distributiva. All of these have their source as well in love, and these are our common principles and our common values. All of these values, which have their source in God, are common values for all of us. And they open the course for a journey of love, a journey of common understanding together. And these help us to define human dignity.
İnsan haklarını Meryem oğlu İsa Mesih aleyhisselamın buyurduğu gibi sağlam.
As has been declared by the Lord, as has been declared also in the scriptures, be that in the Holy Quran or in the Bible.
Aynı zamanda da Kur'an-ı Kerim'de yer alan bu temel.
These basic principles once again are emphasized in the holy books of the peoples of the book. And
İsa'nın buyurduğu gibi kum üzerine kurulmuş yapı gibidir.
And anything which goes contrary to this is nothing more than a kind of construct on sand. These are constructs which lead to nothing more than a biased approach and chauvinism overall. But following the basic principles of the Lord Jesus Christ, we establish ourselves on a firm footing.
Varlık felsefesi ontoloji açısından bir postüla değildir. Allah'ın varlığı bir postüla değildir, bir fiksiyon da değildir.
This, whatever comes from this principal source, God, is not fiction. It is something which is absolute and something which is pure.
Bir postüla veyahut fiksiyon olarak görmemek.
And it is something which ought not be seen as a postula or as a fiction. These are what ought to be and which are the basic core values of human beings.
Doğru bir ontoloji.
In order to establish a proper ontology, the only source that we can have is Allah Himself, God Himself, and the love of Allah, the love of God. This is the source, and this is what will establish that mutual bond between human beings.
Varoluş felsefesiyle egzistansiyel
It is what will help us to see the way to define an existential philosophy according to which we can live and according to which we ought to live. And it will show us the way towards forging whatever is necessary for human rights to truly exist. So living within this environment of love, of God's love, and comprehending that this is from God, this will be the way that we can go, the only way. A proper ontology, a proper philosophical approach to life, a philosophy which will help us to reveal the goodness in the hearts of human beings. Now, in the word Brussels, Bruxelles, as it is in French, we see that word hidden in it, Brücke, which in German means bridge, and which is the motto of our meeting here today. Now, to establish this particular bridge, we have to understand this message of love, because this bridge is a bridge of love, a bridge which is an expression of the philosophy of Jesus Christ and of Allah. With this particular bridge, there is no room for Machiavellism or any such external factors which diverge from the principle of love, from the message of love of God and of Allah. Remember the message of Yunus Emre, of Mevlana, of Saint Augustine. The love of the spirit, the love of the human soul, the philosophy of love as expressed by these individuals. And here there is a categorical message, a message that bonds human beings between themselves, that creates a mutuality, if you like, between human beings. There isn't, however, that type of mutuality that we have heard referred to in the past, that if the Greeks do that, or if that is done in Greece, then we will do that. No, not this type of mutuality, but a mutuality which bonds individuals.
Yer vardır bu alanda. İslam'ın len tenabil birre hatta tunfiku mimma tuhibbun.
And now the speaker quotes in Arabic from the Quran Karim. In other words, we have to save ourselves from egoism and a self-centered approach. We have to understand that we share this place with others, that we move towards some sort of way of achieving a unity between human beings, and that any other approach is an approach which is which will lead us in the wrong direction. It is a sense, in other words, that we have to have a sense, of self-sacrifice, of understanding. And once again, the speaker quotes in Arabic. Those who achieve love, those who are capable of crossing that particular bridge, they may be Muslims, may be Jews, may be Christians. It makes no difference, because God is one, and the road of truth, the course of truth is a single one. In nature. But and it is when we cross together this particular bridge that we realize actually the common points that exist between us. We realize that particular thread that unites all of us, irrespective of religion. Proper love, good love, proper philosophy, all of these to completely evaporate or fragment the differences that exist between individuals and their cultures. Just as the bridges that go across the Golden Horn and the Bosporus, those bridges that unite two continents and two mentalities, two different cultures, this is the type of bridge, that we need to bridge the differences, to minimize the gap that exists between people. This dialogue cannot be based on specifics of faith. This is not the approach that has to exist. What we have to do is find the linking points between us, the points that unite us. This is the way that dialogue can be conducted, and this is the way that dialogue can be successful. Any sort of other approach would lead us into dissent or into a quagmire of disagreement. Just as the Rabbi Schneider said to us yesterday, that the wrong interpretation of the right religion, he explained to us what sort of dead end that can lead us into. So we have to take into consideration, once again, the importance of dialogue, of a bridge, of the two sides of that bridge, in order to establish some sort of union and understand what the points of convergence are. This will help us in our fight or in our struggle to eliminate any clash that exists of civilizations, and it is on that bridge that we will meet and that we will be able to overcome any sort of chauvinism, Turkish chauvinism, Huntingtonism, or any other type of chauvinism whatsoever. In this way, we will consciously be able to overcome, to transcend these differences that exist and prejudice of any kind. We will love each other. My prophet says, my prophet proclaims that other peoples of the book ought to be able to live on our lands in peace and express themselves religiously as they feel fit. And that this is the proper road, and that any other approach would be unacceptable and ought to be taken before the court of God. But the key here is tolerance, in other words, and now it is only in this particular fashion, through tolerance, expressed through that message of love, that this can be achieved. And I must, following the words of my prophet, I must defend those who are victim of any sort of repression or persecution whatsoever. Any other way of behaving would be contrary to the message of the prophet, and similar messages exist as well in among the other faiths of the book.
Bu dünyanın iktidarı ve serveti bir yere haksız bir damla zulm ile bir damla kan damlamasına değmez.
All sorts of persecution or inequalities or any sort of injustice committed has to be defended by the people of the prophet, by the people of the book, of the single book, and that is only such that we will be able indeed to overcome the differences that exist between us when we fight for each other, when that type of proper, if you like, mutuality exists, and when we are able to overcome. It is only thus that we'll be able to overcome the differences that exist between us. And those are the messages which have been issued, of course, by our prophet and by the Lord Jesus Christ.
Tam aksine pekala Papa'nın
Here, quite the contrary to the position that has been adopted to not use the term ecumenical in the title of His All Holiness. Quite the contrary, it is that title, ecumenical, which has to be used by the Turkish state and which has to be emphasized, because it is that message of ecumenicity which underlines and underscores that particular importance of tolerance and mutual understanding that has to exist between us. Now, with regard to the seminary on Halki, and indeed, it has to be opened immediately. There is no question about that whatsoever. And also, with regard to the orphanage, the order or the judgment issued by the European Court of Human Rights has to be carried out, has to be executed as well. These would be expressions of love on the part of the Turkish state. These are the elements that we have to emphasize. Now, we felt the pain. We cried just as bitterly as our Armenian co-citizens cried with the assassination of Hrant Dink.
Arasında da diyalog köprüleri kurulmasından, Hristiyan ekümenisinden de ancak sevinç duyarım. Biz sevinç duyarız.
feel love, we express love, and this is the message of our Prophet as well. This is the way that we have to follow in order to really have some sort of rapprochement. However, I'd like to repeat, whatever bridge that might be, whatever side of the bridge that might be, we have to flee from any sort of Huntingtonism. We have to understand that those bridges are bridges which unite individuals and bring them together.
Bartolomeos Hazretleriyle konuşmamızda bu teller.
And of course, the message is also delivered by His All-Holiness in His message of love. But we also, of course, draw our example from Mevlana, from Plato, from great philosophers of the past, that particular message of love. However, Huntington, in his last book, mentions the following, that Turkey has totally gone overboard, or just simply derailed itself in this issue. But let us not forget that basically it is not between the East and the West.
Türkiye Doğu ve Batı arasında köprü olduğunu iddia ediyor. Demek ki şunu itiraf ediyor. Ne doğudandır ne batıdandır. Çünkü köprü iki kıtanın, iki kıyının hiçbirisi demek değildir.
We have to understand that it is really not between the two continents. It is a merging of the two continents, and not something that lies simply in between these two continents. This is something that we have to understand, and this will shed light or help us to find some sort of point of convergence and understanding.
Hangi dili konuşuyorsak konuşalım.
Whatever language we speak, whatever nation or nationality we might be, the truth of God is the same, and the happiness which emerges, or which becomes a source, or which has as its source this particular love, is felt the same and expressed in the same fashion, and can be achieved in the same fashion. That's what I wanted to say. And do we still have a couple of more minutes or not? And there's something that I'd like to say.
Tebrik edilmesi gereken Allah'ın mübarek kıldığı
we have to express our great gratitude and thanks to the Ecumenical Patriarch, to His All-Holiness, for all efforts that he have made for rapprochement.
Önderlik ettiği Avrupa kiliselerinin imzaladığı bu şart da Ecumenica'dan sonra
unfortunately, however, the effects of Huntingtonism seem to have affected numerous different Europeans, regardless of the great efforts that have been made by His All-Holiness, for which we ought to feel great gratitude. And let us not forget, of course, the work that has been done by great individuals such as Adenauer, and understand the importance of great thinkers, but the importance also of the faiths, of the monotheistic faiths of Islam and of Christianity as well, in order to save humanity, in order to help humanity out of the most difficult of times. I'd like to thank you very much, and express once again my ever deepest wishes of hope and gratitude towards His All-Holiness, and of course to all of those present. Thank you very much.